from KingArthur.com. We're here with Peter Cross. So, you played a music or something, right? You played some music?
Did I play some music? Yeah, I played some music. What kind of question is that?
Like back when, tell us. That's exact. Yes, tell us. Did you play some music?
Yes, I played some music. I think I just answered that question.
But when?
So let me tell you about Woodstock.
Yeah.
Okay, because I was at Woodstock. And
how'd you get there?
It was a wonderful thing. And actually I had bought tickets to the Woodstock. When it was advertised, I saw the advertisement in the paper. And when I saw the bands that were actually going to play there, I mean, Jimi Hendrix was going to be there, The Who was going to be there. The list went on and on. There were all kinds of people I wanted to see. So I bought tickets, and we drove the Steamobile up there.
No.
Yep, there was me and Chris, keyboard player from Steam, and Mona, the Atomic ex-wife, and my sister, who was 7 years younger than me, and one of her friends. And I think there might have been, it was also my friend Casey and Robin from New York. We all piled into, I don't know.
It's like a dozen almost.
I can't count them. It's 6 or 7. Anyway, we all piled into the steam truck and drove up there. And the first interesting thing that happened was we hit the famous traffic jam, and couldn't get in. We were out. The traffic was jammed all the way clear out to the highway, which was many miles from the farm site.
Any clue how many miles?
It was at least 9 miles. It was at least 9 miles to the site. And what happened was Chris, the keyboard player from Steam, who was a notorious wacko, very crazy person, way out there. You know, one of the most creative musicians I knew, but he had the wacky personality to go with it. He hopped out of the car and was running along the side of the road, yelling out, "Jefferson Airplane coming through, watch your toes." And that's what happened. And meanwhile, one of us, I can't remember who, was driving the van up on the shoulder of the road while he ran ahead yelling, "Jefferson Airplane coming through, watch your toes." And that's how we got in. We just simply bypassed everybody and drove up on the shoulder, which was undoubtedly an egotistical and obnoxious thing to do completely. But, you know, there were these bands playing there. We did have tickets, and we were bound and determined to get in. You know, didn't really care who we insulted. Sorry, but that's the way it was. And that's how we got in. And when we got there, almost immediately it was raining and everything. And we had come fairly prepared. We had a tent and everything. And we did have the van, and we had bought a lot of good food, hamburgers and things that we were going to cook out. And of course we had the requisite marijuana and hashish with us, because Casey was with us, and Casey was the dealer at the time and always had this wonderful shoebox full of goodies that went wherever Casey went. And so we set up the tent, and it started raining, and the tent got soaking wet, and everything got to be a complete mess. And I missed the beginning and the opening of the festival, which I'm going to mention right now. We might come back to it at some point in the future, because it is very interesting that Swami Satchidananda was the Swami that they chose to bless Woodstock and give the invocation to open the whole event and let it start. And I did not know who he was at the time, and I missed him completely. And in hindsight, that is kind of interesting.
Could you hear him?
No, not at all. I mean, I didn't even know about him or anything at the time, but it's hindsight talking, because I am a disciple of Swami Satchidananda, and I missed him completely at Woodstock. So there's something kind of interesting about that. I found them much later on. But back to Woodstock, the overwhelming impression at the time was, this is an ungodly mess, and everybody here is complaining their asses off, and don't they realize that they're in the midst of an experience that isn't going to happen again? The music is so awesome, it doesn't make any difference about the mud, so why is everybody complaining? None of them are going to remember this event that way. They're all going to put a a shine on it and go around telling everybody what a blast they had, when in fact they were just complaining their asses off all the time about the mud and how awful it was, and how there were no toilets and nobody was prepared with anything, and all I ever heard there was complaining, and I wasn't doing it. I was having a blast, and I realized that something really new was happening here, and I was a part of it, and I was just ecstatic to be there. So
what's this
the other
with
thing,
Wavy Gravy?
yeah, with Wavy Gravy, I did meet Wavy Gravy at Woodstock, because Wavy Gravy and the hog farm had the job of taking care of the stars and everything, and serving up the food. So I did get to go backstage, and I met him, but of course he has no memory of that. I wouldn't expect him to. He doesn't have that much memory of anything. And some years later, after my divorce, when I was going through some very hard times, and I was extremely alone, utterly alone as a person could possibly be, and I was wandering around the streets of Oakland one day, I can't remember why, and I saw a poster on a telephone pole, and the poster was for Camp Win a Rainbow, and what it said was, "Come to Camp Win a Rainbow. We've got guitar players on stilts." And I looked at that and I said, "Oh, whoa, guitar players on stilts. Now I really need this. This I have to have." And so I packed up in my car and I drove all the way up to Layton, California, which I think it was 200 and something miles. It took the better part of a day to get there. And I did get lost and ended up having to ask directions, but I did end up at Wavy Gravy's camp. And he was running this camp for adults called Camp Win a Rainbow. Not for kids, for adults. And lots of people were coming to his camp. It was an interesting property. Had a lot to do with the American Indians. They had teepees and bonfires and all kinds of things set up to live kind of a back to the land Indian kind of life, and they were all into these tribal ceremonies and beating drums and worshiping the Indian gods and things like that. And I got there and I brought some. I had brought some of my recorded music with me, and I wanted to get a chance to play my stuff for him. And the other thing that happened, and I was waiting, because he was a very busy guy. He was running the camp, and I was just waiting for the right opportunity to introduce myself to him. And in the meantime, this weird-looking guy with tattoos all over him comes walking up to me and says, "Do you remember me?" I said, "Well, I'm sorry. I have this real problem with names and faces. It happens to me very often, so please don't take it personally. I don't." And he said, "Well, I'm Jorma Kaukonen from the Jefferson Airplane, and I met you at the heliport in Sausalito when you recorded with Willie Truckaway." I said, "Oh, wow, yeah, I remember you were practicing with Hot Tuna in the next studio, you and Cassidy. I remember you. But I don't remember you with the tattoos, and you had long hair. You have no hair now. How do you expect me to remember that?" Something like that. "Of course I remember you, Jorma. Who doesn't remember Jorma?" And so it turned out that Jorma was the guitar player on stilts, because he could do that.
Did you get to see him do it?
Yes, yes. And so Jorma and I hung out a lot there. And I played my music for him, and that was a lot of fun. And then I did get to meet Wavy Gravy, and I just have to say he's quite a character. He's kind of old, or he has an old appearance anyway. He does not look like a young guy. He looks like a lot of years and a lot of acid. And where he was living on his camp was real interesting. There was a stream that ran down below the main campground area, and he had set up a mattress right by the stream with one of those coat racks that those people push around in New York City. Those dress people in the garment district, those things that they have that they're always pushing dresses around on. He had one of those things, and a mattress, and an altar with all these bizarre crystals and interesting knickknacks and little Jesuses and Buddhas and things like that. He'd set up an altar and his clothes rack and his mattress, and that's the way the guy was living. And it never rained up there, so he had no problem. The weather was always very good. And we sat on his mattress, and he told me he was a songwriter, which I didn't know. And he said, and I was pouring my heart out to him about my divorce and what was going on with my loss of my children, and I was really, finding a sympathetic ear. And then I found out why, because he said, I'm a songwriter, and I've been through what you've been through. I didn't lose my children, but I did lose the love of my life. He said, would you like to hear a song that I wrote about her? And I said, yeah, I really would. So he pulled out this instrument, this string instrument that only had one string, big thing. It kind of looks like your sitar, but the neck was very thin, and it only had one string on it. And so he sat there and plucked this one string, sort of like a Jew's harp. It was very weird because he obviously couldn't get it do very much. You could slide your finger up and down on it and just pluck it and pluck it and pluck it. And he sang this very sad song about losing his soulmate. It was very sad. It touched my heart. And I realized that the guy did know what I was talking about. So I ended up staying there for a couple days and hanging out with these people, and then leaving and going back home. Going back to what I was going through.
Wow. The wave of the wavy gravy.